Howdy there folks, Quinn of Snazzy Labs, and this is an NES or NES, GIF, whatever. This is an NES game cartridge. Or is it? Many games from the 1980s and early 90s are iconic, and this video will show you how to use a little $5 computer to create your own modernized game console so that you can play your favorite classic titles in 4K resolution for less than $30, all in the size of an NES cartridge. The parts you'll need are the following: a $5 Raspberry Pi computer, which will run a kernel of Linux that will allow us to emulate our favorite classics, a Class 10 micro SD card, I'd recommend 8 GB or higher, any old USB thumb drive you've got laying around which will help us transfer games to the system. It helps if the USB drive has an indicator light, a micro USB to USB-A adapter so that we can plug in a USB hub, mini HDMI to full-size HDMI so we can output our favorite games in up to 4K resolution on a TV of our choice, a micro USB to micro USB adapter so that we can have plug-and-play power, a micro USB wall wart that can output 5 volts at least 1 amp, which is pretty much every phone charger made in the last several years, at least one USB or Bluetooth gamepad, though I'd recommend a couple for local multiplayer play, and of course, a NES cartridge. If you don't have one, you can find crappy games like golf on eBay for less than a couple bucks. Let's talk software. On the Mac, you'll need to download RetroPie, which is a free Linux distro that will allow us to emulate our favorite games. Then download Apple Pi Baker. Though you could create bootable media through the terminal, this is a lot easier for beginners. Then open Apple Pi Baker. You'll notice that it asks you for your admin password, and this is so that it can gain sudo or root access to mount and unmount the SD card that you're trying to write over. You'll notice that your SD card will appear on the left. Highlight it by clicking it, and then press Restore Backup. You'll then need to navigate to find the .img RetroPie file you downloaded earlier, and then press Open, and the application will take care of the rest of it. Once it's done, just simply eject the disk. On Windows, the process is very similar. Download RetroPie for your Pi Zero, and then you'll also need to download Win32 Disk Imager. It's free, it's super lightweight, and you can uninstall it when you're done. On Windows 10, for whatever reason, RetroPie tends to download compressed as a .gz file. If you use 7-zip or WinRAR, you can extract that file to the desktop and then find the .img file that you'll actually need to write to your Pi Zero. Then open Win32 Disk Imager. Once you've opened the app, press that little blue folder icon and a window will pop up. Once the window pops up, find your retropie.img file, click it, and press Open. Double check the device to make sure that it's the microSD card you're overwriting and not some other drive. Then press Write, then press Continue, and voila, it should be done pretty quickly. The remaining setup process is going to take place on the Pi itself. Insert the microSD card, and then we are going to build the system on our desk to make sure that everything works and the setup's complete before we jam it into that tiny case. Take your mini HDMI cable and plug it into the header on the Pi Zero. Then once you've done that, we need to take our power adapter, which is the micro USB to micro USB power adapter, and plug that into the power header. Once we've done that, last and certainly not least, we need to plug in our micro USB to USB header, plug the controller into the hub, and then plug the hub into the header on the board. We need to plug in the HDMI cable, and last but certainly not least, we'll plug the power into the Pi itself, and if you have your monitor turned on, it should begin to boot. You'll then get to this menu where you can map your controller. It's pretty easy to follow the directions provided. Once you're booted up and ready to go, enter the RetroPie settings and press Raspberry Config. Once you enter that menu, when you're on Expand File System, hit the right arrow key on your controller so that both Expand File System and Select are highlighted. Then you'll need to press the B key. A bunch of processes are in the background, and what that allows us to do is resize the partition so that we can make room for our games. Then navigate to the end of the menu, press Finish, and then reboot the system. Once the system reboots, plug your USB drive into the USB hub. The Pi will automatically create a hierarchy so that you can move your games to and from the USB drive. When you plug in the USB drive to your computer, you'll notice that RetroPie has created a new hierarchy of folders. If you open the ROMs folder, you can drag and drop the ROMs that you're using for a specific console into that respective folder. Then when you plug the USB drive back into the Pi, it will automatically import them, which is really pretty handy. You don't have to do a single thing. I'm not going to tell you where to get ROMs because of legal issues, but it's a pretty easy Google search away. Once you plug that USB drive back into the Pi, it will automatically import all the new games, but don't remove it until that light stops flashing and turns solid. Use the special tool listed in the parts list to remove the wonky screws that Nintendo puts on all of the NES cartridges, and then remove the actual game. Oh, it's so old and retro and nostalgic. Time to make room for the new parts. We're going to Dremel out this little wall that separates the game card because we need to make room for all of our new headers. You can Dremel it out or cut it with a box cutter. Once we've done that, we need to pull apart the Amazon Basics hub. It's pretty easy, just use your fingernail to pry it open. It's not going to fit inside the case if we leave it like this, so we need to expose the bare PCB. Once we've done that, we'll need to grab a pair of pliers and remove this little LED because it stands a little bit too tall and gets in the way. Just grab it with a pair of pliers and rip it right off. You don't have to be super careful. Now we're going to install all of the components into the sticker half side of the case. Grab your USB PCB first, and we're going to need to affix it. You can use super glue, hot glue, doesn't really matter. I prefer this extreme mounting tape from Scotch. Apply it to the bottom or glue it to the bottom, and then align it with that little corner that you can see in the top right corner of the PCB. It fits perfectly. Now we need to mount the Pi, and I would recommend mounting it on the left side of the case, about in this area. You don't have to be crazy precise, but it does help as it is a tight space. This is what the finished product should look like. You see we have our Pi there, we have our regular USB header there, we have our micro USB power cable, our micro USB to USB-A, and then USB-A to the USB hub. And then of course, last but certainly not least, we have our mini HDMI out. It's a tight fit, but it does fit. And that's all there is to it. So get out there and build your own. If you enjoyed this video, I would appreciate a like. If you didn't think it was very good, that other button seems to work okay too. All the links you need for this tutorial are in the video description below. Get subscribed to the channel for more awesome tech videos like these, but most importantly, and as always, stay snazzy.